So you guys might remember last week we talked about end-of-life decisions and sharing those decisions with your family. So we're continuing on today, but with a lighter topic, in the sense of, we know that loss is an inevitable part of life, and grief is a natural part of the healing process. So the reasons for grief are many reasons, such as loss of a loved one, the loss of health, or letting go of a long-term dream. Dealing with a significant loss can be one of the most difficult times in a person's life. So our guest today is, she's worked as a healthcare professional with hospice and dementia patients and their families for over 20 years. She has a master's of science in gerontology administration and rural health from the University of Utah. Joy's developed some simple everyday life-changing strategies and holistic approaches that she presents through her Restore Joy After Loss and Grief Release workshop. She has coaching and programs for individuals and families as they grieve. So please join me in welcoming our guest today, Joy Lucinda Klein from Restore Joy After Loss. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And so, Joy, last week we talked about the experience of loss, and I know I was crying. So a lot of times there are some unresolved issues when someone is lost, or a situation changes, a job changes, and you developed a career on helping people get through those blocks. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. It's very interesting because I've, even though my name is Joy, I always make a joke. I make people cry even though my name is Joy. And it's simply because I've worked in hospice and dementia care, which is a huge loss, an obvious loss that people go through for many, many years. But the thing is, recently I've gone through my own grief process. My parents are currently in a senior care. My mom is going through a cognitive shift, and my dad is falling, had a lot of issues. So I'm dealing with my own grief in a lot of ways. But the thing is, it was all in tandem while I was developing this Restore Joy program, Restore Joy After Loss. So I'm very raw and open to the experience. But the thing is, it's very interesting about this. We talk about grief, we think about talking about it, think about the sadness, but this is an empowering mindset shift where you can honor your grief, but at the same time, joy is always behind the clouds of your grief. It's not like you have to find it. And I can show you how in very easy ways to shift it. And so I'm really glad I can share that today with you.
Well, we're so happy that you're here as a guest on our show.
So let me pose a scenario. Maybe the grieving person says, people tell me I should be over my grief by now. How do you address that?
Well, first of all, I just wrote a book called Restore Joy After Loss, and it's about these strategies we're talking about. And one of the things I talk about is how do you deal with this issue. First of all, the people don't know what to say. They think they're helping. Oh, you'll get over it, but it's only because they're scared of having the same kind of loss potentially. Fear is one of those things, if we put emotions on a scale, blame, shame, fear, and guilt are at the bottom of the scale. Joy, love, and peace is at the top of the scale. And so fear makes us say things that just keep us from getting hurt. Just like if someone threw a snowball at your face, you're going to put your hands up and avoid it. Same thing. You're avoiding grief because you don't know what to say because it scares you.
Well, I think that it's painful. I think those feelings are raw and painful too.
They are, absolutely.
So when you're going through this, how is joy possible when you feel this way?
Well, it's very interesting because, joy is possible because, how do I explain this? Sorry. Well, first of all, let's talk about what grief does to you. It actually overshadows what's really happening in your life. So you may have a beautiful life, a beautiful husband, a beautiful wife, a beautiful house, a beautiful situation, but for some reason you have blinders on and you can't see it. When you have those low-level emotions like feeling blame because maybe your grandmother died and you didn't take good enough care for her, you feel guilty. Well, what ends up happening is that you don't even think about joy. You think you deserve to be in a state of shame or guilt. and it overshadows what's already there. Joy is actually present even if you're going through blame. And so having joy it's not about finding it. Joy is just present behind the scenes, like the sun behind the clouds.
You know, I have a friend, just to interrupt here, I have a friend who recently lost, she was a younger girl in her 40s and was widowed after 3 years of marriage. Husband took ill and passed away. And it's so interesting, and I'm hoping that she's listening to this today, because she is just starting an 80-day journey on how to deal with grief and restoration afterwards. And a lot of it is really what you're talking about. We almost have to give ourselves time to do the steps. Right? And nobody can force how fast those steps can go.
Right. It's not about the amount of time. The time is irrelevant. You go through it as you will until it heals. And it's still going to be a scar. It's not going to go away like people think it will. But we're going to go over this when we talk about my 10 steps. But the key is to tell yourself the truth. Instead of saying, I should feel better, I'm trying to get through my day, just say, I don't know how I'm feeling today. I am sad today. I feel like crap today. And guess what? What happens is that your brain actually awakens when you say the truth. You're lying to yourself if you say, I'm okay, I'm fine, just to avoid the comments of other people. We have to be in that state and just not worry about what other people are telling us.
Let the truth set you free.
It really, really does. And it's really, I think Americans in general, we don't want to say we don't know because we feel ignorant, maybe stupid, but it's not. I just don't know how I feel. And it's amazing because when you say that and you don't lie to yourself, your brain just stops there and it accepts that as truth. And that helps you move forward.
It opens it up to other things.
Yeah.
So
Unbelievable.
we don't realize that it's a block, that we're creating for ourselves. So, what's the response when people say, like, I'm scared of what my life will look like without a person or like a job or, something like that?
Yes, because this goes on more, aside from grief, as we were talking over coffee this morning, this is almost like a life coaching opportunity.
You're right. It absolutely is, because it's really about shifting the way you see your life now. And so let me see what is the best way to address this. Well, I will tell you something interesting. I was talking about a scale earlier, and it's very interesting because even if you are angry about your situation because you lost that person and you don't know what your life will look like, or you're scared of this change that was forced on you, if you start getting angry about it, you're finally angry instead of guilty or fearful, that means you're motivated to change into your new role. And that's part of the scale that's in my book. But the thing is, if you're angry, it means you're motivated and change is on the horizon and you don't have to really work toward it. It just happens automatically where you start accepting a little more and a little more of this new life. And that's all it takes, is a little bit every day.
And sometimes, though, the days don't go fast enough, and other days they go so fast.
How about when you're talking to someone and they'll make a comment and say, I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking about all the things I have to do or what I could have done better to prevent this loss from happening. How do I stop my crazy mind, kind of put it in gear so I can get some sleep and function better at work?
Okay, well, this is a pervasive issue, whether you're grieving or not, because we all overthink. And that is probably one of the worst chronic illnesses we can have, is overthinking. So how do you stop overthinking? First of all, let me tell you what overthinking is. Let's say you're like, oh my gosh, my spouse died, what am I going to do with my life? Which is valid. Well, what happens is that every time you've had that same emotion, the brain brings in a tidal wave of thoughts related to every time you had that emotion. So you have maybe 1 million experiences in your head, and then you feel it all at once. So how do you decrease that overthinking? First of all, listening to music bypasses the thinking brain. Second of all, there's a strategy, super easy. You can imagine a vacuum hose going in your brain and sucking all of those thoughts out.
Wow.
But the third thing is a simple question. What else is possible? It's like neutralizes, just like a nuclear bomb neutralizes everything around it. what else is possible neutralizes overthinking thoughts that are not even real. They're the past. And then what else is possible neutralizes it, so it's not an emotional thing anymore. It's just a simple thing where your brain can think about every time it had an open end where the future was possible. And then that's all that's left. And then you can start fresh. So that's just one strategy for how to stop the overthinking mind. But before you sleep, here's another quick strategy. And I am a reflexologist as well. If you just place your middle finger to the middle of your hand like a loose fist, and just
We're all doing it.
We're
Yeah, I
all
know.
doing this,
We're
We're
guys.
all gonna be
Sleep here,
sleeping
I'm
for
sure.
a few seconds.
this is like a reset button. Now, what's very interesting is that when our bodies are tense, it's usually because we're angry, grieving, guilty, sad, and then your body gets tense. Emotional tension is the same as physical tension. But when you do this, when you do a light fist into the middle of your hand, this creates a Chinese medicine approach to actually release the tension from your body, which automatically releases that emotional tension, which allows an opening to open up where it's just a nice, easy, peaceful, emotional, neutral state. And
Which
that's all you
automatically
do. And this also
relaxes,
helps you
yeah.
sleep.
And that's a great time probably when the opening is there to ask what else is possible,
Yes.
you know?
And the thing is, even if you don't feel like asking it, just ask it, and then feel if your brain goes from tense to light. It's a concept I call heavy versus light. And if it's heavy or dense or tense in your brain, it means you have too many emotions and thoughts related to those emotions going on in there. But if you ask what else is possible, you create a light. It's almost like the sun comes out and the sky is blue.
It's like a negative versus a positive.
Yeah.
Kind of charge. The
But it's
negative
a-
weighs you down and gets you tense, and the positive just lifts you up a little.
Yes. And what's the heaviest thing we can have on our shoulders? Emotional baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no weight limit for emotional baggage. But if that's what else is possible does. It removes that emotional baggage so you can just lift your shoulders up and walk free, and you feel it in your body.
It's amazing. I'm not happy with my current job, but I really am. But let's say there's a person that's not happy in their current situation, job, marriage, relationship, family dynamics, which we see a lot, living situations we also see a lot. How can I change the situation so I can do what I really want?
Well, it's a matter of, well, I just mentioned it in a way, releasing that emotional baggage, which is easier said than done. But one thing that's very important to do, which is part of one of the 10 steps, easing into neutral, is allow yourself to simply recuperate. Easing into neutral. Neutral is the gear between reverse and drive in our car, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing in our everyday lives. It's the difference between, it's that center point between the past and the future. And how do you just stay there and recuperate? And so this is just a time when you have non-judgmental contentment in your life, where you're not judging, oh my gosh, I hate my husband, I'm miserable, but I can't do anything about it. You can just sit and you aren't attached to the outcome. And I actually have a whole REST protocol around this, which is an acronym we can go over later, or I can send you that PDF. But being neutral really helps this. Now, so basically you're not thinking about all the things you did wrong in the past, or what is my future going to look like. You're just saying, I'm right here now, and just resting. Just like right before you feel when you're getting ready to close your eyes to go to sleep. It's that kind of feeling. How can I change the situation so I can do what I really want? Well, first of all, you have to release that resistance I mentioned earlier with the tension in the body. You have to stop overthinking, which I already mentioned, the what else is possible. But the next key in order to change your current situation is to test drive new words. Now, one thing you can do is sometimes we whine, we have excuses, and you have a right to when you're feeling crappy. Because you're going through a major change in your life, and it stinks, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is not pretty. It's awful. But the thing is, I have this concept called do be know, try should think. So you can say, I should be better than this by now. I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to get through this. I don't know what to do. I can't do this anymore. But what happens is that your brain floods in with all those negative emotions, and trying, should, and thinking don't do anything. So I tell you to do be know. And it starts simply with a statement of, I am ready to move on from my current life. I am ready to make my marriage work. I am ready to have the courage to get a new job that I really love. When you say I am ready, your brain automatically goes into future mode. And then it changes your entire mindset where you are hopeful. There's this really interesting acronym for hope, by the way. Hold on, pain ends.
Ooh, I like that.
That gives me chills every time, because so that's what we're talking about. When you say I am ready to change the situation, whatever it is, or I am ready to at least think about changing the situation, that's called hope. And hope is the motivating force to get you closer to forgiveness, love, joy, and peace. And it's a simple process where you don't have to think about it. It just happens automatically when you release the tension in your body and you tell yourself the truth, like I mentioned earlier. You can say, I know that I am not doing well today, but I am ready to do better. And doesn't that, you feel that, right? It's not.
It's like a at a girl. You know, it's your get up and go.
Yeah.
You know, you're I'm ready to take it out of neutral and get it to drive. Move forward.
Yeah. But the thing is, I also want to address the move forward, because so often people say, just move forward. That can be a scary thing too. And you don't have to move forward. You can stay where you're at the rest of your life if you want. But the thing is, how do you find contentment whether you move forward or not? And it's about letting go of those negative thoughts and negative emotions just through saying something more positive, even if you don't believe it. Your brain believes what you tell it. So just tell it something good.
You know, and I've really enjoyed our conversation this morning over coffee, and this always intrigues me. And we were discussing, you know, our individual personalities and how we deal with things like this. It's okay to miss somebody if you lose them. It's okay.
Yes.
But there's so many other things that you can be looking at. You had just mentioned, you know, we had talked about several religions over. What I hear you describing are the fruits of the Spirit.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing that drives us forward. Is we all have spiritual gifts, whether you believe in God, Buddha, whatever. It doesn't matter, the religion. So that's part of my book as well, is that how do you get to the point where joy is possible always? And what that means is that you find compassion in others and yourself enough where you can move forward in some level. But what it really means, I lost my train of thought for a second. Hold on.
That's all right.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
You were talking about the Buddhism and the different religions.
The fruits.
The fruits, spiritual gifts. So this is a time for you, kind of when I talk about neutrality and recuperation, where you explore your spiritual gifts and what you can give to other people. When you start doing that, it fuels you, so you do it for yourself. And so that's the real point. We all have different ones. Mine's encouragement, motivation. I know people it's acts of service. I know other people it's helping others through service, whatever. But the thing is, when we use our spiritual gifts, it comes back to us. And it just allows for you to be open. Now there's a strategy, another way to change your mindset that brings you to that point of compassion where you don't have to even consciously forgive people. May I be loved. May I be adored. May I be cherished. May I be able to move forward into my spiritual gifts. May I be forgiven, especially when you're feeling guilty about any kind of loss you've had. And then you say it to the people in your life that are heavy. May you be loved. May you be cherished. May you be forgiven, whether you want to forgive them or not. And then you open up that space where you can actually be free of those burdens. So it's like the wind blowing a leaf in the autumn. It just blows you forward without the force. This is called the loving kindness meditation. And it's about just clearing the space in yourself and others and giving yourself permission to be light. Like I mentioned earlier. It's that simple. You don't have to believe it at all. If you say it, it's the same vibration as love and joy. So it gets you closer to God and your higher purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, taking Leah's example, your friend whose husband had passed, how do you help someone who, you know, they're torn between feeling the need to move on and then feeling like if they move on, they have abandoned the memory of the person that died, and they want to honor that person, so they're pulled between
Good point.
the two.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guide people like that?
Well, it's a concept I call remember but look ahead. And it's the rear view mirror concept. I'm a road tripper. I love the open road. And I actually took my rear view mirror fell in my lap about 4 years ago from a car. And I tried to put it up like 3 times and it wouldn't glue up there. I don't have a rear view mirror. I hope the police don't hear this. But it's very interesting because I was so happy because I thought, oh, this is a sign from God that I don't have to look at the
Oh my
past anymore. I
gosh.
can move forward. Well, but if you notice, if any of you don't have a rear view mirror, which most people do, you can see a panoramic view of the landscape. So when I went to Arizona this past April, I could see the mountains I used to live in. I could not see the mountains I used to live in because the rental car had a rear view mirror. And all I could see was my face and a little piece of what was behind me. But when my rear view mirror fell off in my literal car, I noticed that my whole vision ahead opened up. And I actually almost had a wreck in Arizona going down a spiraling mountain because I was looking under the rearview mirror to see the scenery because I was so desperate to pull the past back from when I lived there and to see that beauty. So do you see what I mean? So remembering is a small piece of it, but looking ahead is for your safety and total well-being because you can't stop your life. It still moves forward. Your grandkids still grow up. Your kids still grow up. You still have to go to work and function.
So it's not just a mind reset, it's a heart reset.
It's a new heart set. Absolutely. So you have mindset and hearts. Absolutely. And Robin Sharma actually talks a lot about this if you'd like to look at that up on YouTube. But yes, the heart set shifts at that point automatically without effort.
And
Simply.
So, you know, time is going so fast here today, Joy, and I want to make sure that we have time to go through your 10 steps very briefly, but maybe what we should do is share your information first,
Sure.
so that the guests have know how to get a hold of you.
Okay. Actually, if you'd like to get a hold of me, please go to my website, www.restorejoyafterloss.com, and you can put your name, email, and phone number in there, and then I can get a hold of you. We can talk about your situation. It's a free consultation where I just answer your questions about what you're going through and give you some more custom ideas about this. And for everybody who signs up there by January 19th, I'm actually going to email you a free copy of my ebook, which most people are having to buy it. So this is your opportunity to do that. And also I'll send you the REST protocol for recuperating and neutral.
One more time on their website.
www.restorejoyafterloss.com. And then I can get a hold of you personally. If you want to go to my other website, which has more information about me, it's joylucinda.com.
You're wonderful. And so we want to talk about the 10 steps.
How much time do we have, Jeanette?
We've got about
4 minutes.
Okay, we can do this very, very quickly.
Okay.
I actually made notes here.
Oh,
Okay, so basically what I did to write my book is I created a Restore Joy acronym. And that's where a lot of the concepts we've been, here, they can look at that. The Restore Joy acronym, these are the concepts I've already been talking about, but I'm going to go through these briefly. R is release resistance. And when I talked about being heavy versus light, resistance to joy is what keeps us in a state of guilt, blame, and shame, and grief, for example. And so anyway, I'm not going to go into some of this because in my book it's so laid out how the different sides of your body actually are more, maybe your right versus your left is more tense, and that has to do with which emotional state you're going through. Now, so releasing resistance is the first step, and that's actually my longest chapter because we are very resistant to change. Ease into neutral, which I already talked about, the recuperation and the non-judgmental contentment, where you can just recuperate and rest. Stop overthinking is S. Overthinking is a chronic problem in our society because we're bombarded with social media and advice and information from everything we see. But when we start overthinking about what others think about us, then we're not healing ourselves. It's actually causing this voice in our head to guide us that's not even our voice. It's just crazy thoughts telling us what to do when our truth is different. So that's where I said earlier, what else is possible to clear my mind? And is what I'm doing right now in my highest good? This is a key question no matter what you do. Is this in my highest good? And if you feel heavy, it is not. If you feel light, it is. Period. No, it's black and white, my friends. T, test drive new words. I alluded to this earlier. Instead of saying try, should, and think, which are just excuses, and that you don't want to commit to anything that will help you heal, really. Instead, say do, be, no statements like I am ready to change. I do the best I can today. I know that I'm not where I want to be, but I know I can live through this loss. Things like that are strong words that exhibit your truth. And then your brain and everything in you will be lighter and you'll have an easier time. Oh, overcoming negativity. It's easy to be negative when your spouse dies, or you lose your job, or you get a divorce, or maybe you just screw up a meeting, okay? So, overcoming negativity, prayer is a big part of that, essential oils, there's a lot of strategies. Yes, remember but look ahead, embracing change. Joy is always possible, no matter what. Get on the open road and go travel, and then you got this. You can get there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And so Joy has this, can we attach this to the website today?
Certainly.
Okay.
I've got her book up on our Facebook page already.
Oh, thank you. Okay, great.
Wonderful.
Joy, thanks for being our guest today.
I am so grateful for all of you and all the good work you do for helping people in their homes.
And you too.